Hello everyone, Andrew here. A few days ago, I received a suggestion that I should go through a whole bunch of consoles and show what some of my favorite games are, because, of course, if anyone who's watched my whole collection video can see, I have a ton of games, and I actually do play them all, too. I'm not just one of those collectors that, sort of collects them and doesn't really have any interest in playing them, but that's definitely not me. I've played so many games, and today what I'm going to do is just going to show you some of my favorite games from a whole bunch of different consoles. I have over 100 different games already lined up here. They're just like all crowded around me. I'm just gonna see if I can grab them from here. And all of these are games that I have played a lot. So like when I say they're my favorite game, it's not sort of just, oh, I've heard it's good, so I'm going to show it to you. No, these are all games that I've either beaten multiple times, or I've gotten 100%, or I've just played them a whole ton. And looking at it now, I have played a lot of games, and this isn't even it. I mean, I've played so many more games than this too. That it's actually incredible. At the end of the video, I'll show you how I had it set up. So I'll just sort of, I took a shot before the video, I'll tack on at the end. I'm just showing you how I had everything laid out along here so I can just grab it as we start. But so what we're going to do is we're going to start with NES, my favorite games for that. And we're not going to go back to things like Atari 2600, ColecoVision, the older things, because I don't know too much about them. I mean, of course I've played the games I have, but I started playing video games when I was a kid with the NES, so I have the most appreciation for that. I'm just going to sort of work our way up from there. And I know, of course, some of the games that I show, they're going to be more common ones, some of them anyway, definitely not all of them. Ones that some people may see as overrated, but I mean, even overrated games are still definitely good. Maybe not as much as some people hype them up to be. But there will be some of that, and there will also be some really obscure games too that I'm sure a lot of people that are going to watch this video probably haven't even played or maybe even heard of, because they're just that obscure, like JRPGs once we get up to like the PlayStation 2 and stuff like that. But yeah, anyway, let's get started. Anyone who knows me will definitely know that my favorite game of all time is Star Tropics, or like my favorite NES game for sure. I always have to battle with myself whether it's definitely my favorite game of all time or not, because as you'll see, a whole bunch of different games I'm going to show you, there's just some that come really close to being like right up there at that level with Star Tropics, because it is such an awesome game. It has that, like, I played it, it was one of the very first games I ever played as a kid on the NES, and it just means so much to me. But I'm pretty sure it's my favorite game of all time, but as you'll see, there's some things that really tear me apart when I'm trying to figure that out. Another game for the NES, I'm sure one that everyone has played, Super Mario Bros. 3 is probably my favorite of the NES Mario games, with the exception of maybe Super Mario Bros. 2 that was only released in Japan. This is a pirate cart version of it, but Super Mario Bros. 2 that we later got as the Lost Levels. That is a very awesome game, so let's see, let's stack these. I have a table set up beside me so I can put things down as I show them. Legend of Zelda is, of course, very, very good games for the NES. Some of the best that there are. I love the box, how you can see that there's the gold cartridge through it. Very good games. I always have to debate with myself whether which one I like more, 1 or 2. I know for some people it's an obvious 1, as I mean 2 sucks. It's side-scroller and has nothing to do with the other Zelda games, but I really love side-scrolling games, and it's just sort of the game. I really like it. But yeah, 1's probably my favorite, but overall, I like them both a lot. Another game I really like for NES, Punch-Out. Of course, a lot of people are probably more familiar with the Mike Tyson version, because, I mean, who wants to fight Mr. Dream at the end? Mike Tyson is the one everyone wants to go after, but it's pretty much the exact same game, and I have this one in the box, but yeah, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, very fun game, definitely not an easy game, getting all the way up to Mike Tyson and beating him. Definitely a challenge for those who are looking for one. Another thing, Metroid. Metroid, I really like the Metroid series. I'm a bigger fan of the 2D ones, so you have like Fusion, the original Metroid, Zero Mission, than I am of the Primes. I guess that's just how I am, because I started, of course, back with the older ones, so I guess that's just how I stayed. And then, of course, I had it here somewhere. You'll see I have so many things to show that it's not even funny. Let's not drop things. And I also have the Famicom disk system version. It's actually the exact same thing, just on the disk system. It saves too, which is really cool, instead of making you enter a password every time you play it. Let's see, what else do I got here for NES? Yeah, I know I'm not spending too much time on things, but let's see what will happen first. I'm worried that either the batteries on my camera are going to run out, or my memory card will fill up, because there's just so many games to get through. But yeah, Tetris for NES. Another game that a lot of people have probably played. Well, Tetris anyway. Maybe not the NES version, but the NES version is actually my favorite version of Tetris, just as I guess it was the first one I ever played, and I love the music, that theme. That seems to be pretty good. A lot of people I know like the Game Boy version too. That was one of the ones that got really popular. Another NES game I really like, The Guardian Legend. This is an awesome game. It's sort of like a mix of like a top-down arcade shooter, and then you mix it with Zelda or Star Tropics. You have the overworld levels where you go around and you collect items, and you use the items like swords and things like that to defeat enemies. And then there's sub-stages where you transform into a spaceship, and then you have the arcade thing where you go and shoot the enemies and things like that. I love top-down arcade shooters like that, and I'm going to show you quite a few more of them as we're going through games that I'm showing. Another game that I absolutely love for the NES, and one that just came out in 2010, Battle Kid and the Fortress of Peril, that I bought, of course, new, and it came with the instruction book, version 1.0, so it's one of the earlier ones. This is an awesome game, and I already did a random game of the day of it. It's very I Want to Be the Guy style, or if you don't know what that is, it's pretty much like a Mega Man and a Metroid game combined. It is a lot of fun, and I absolutely love this game. So let's see if I can quickly slip it back into the bag without wrecking the instruction book. Awesome. Alright, let's see. So, of course, other games. Not all of my NES games are boxed, so here's the unboxed ones. I love the entire NES Mega Man series. So here we have a Mega Man 4 NES cart, and then the Rockman 4 cart. No real difference between them, just other than some of the text is Japanese, with the exception of Mega Man 2 and Rockman 2, because in Mega Man 2 you had the option between a normal and difficult mode, or Rockman 2 it was always difficult mode. Let's see here, an NES game I love, Journey to Silas, or some people say Silius. I know I say Silas, but maybe not. But this is an awesome game. It's actually very Mega Man style too, so you'll play through a stage, and at the end you'll get a new weapon which you can then use in other stages. Except there's no sort of a selection on what level you get to play first. You just sort of play through them in sequential order. I believe there's 5 stages. I think there's some sort of story where this was originally going to be a Terminator game, but then they changed it into something else. I don't remember why they did that. I don't even remember if I'm remembering this correctly, because I think I read about that years ago. Alright, let's see what else we got here. Other games. 1943. So yeah, this is one of those top-down shooters I was talking about, that the Guardian Legend is sort of like, you have 1943. Other ones are, of course, R-Type and things like that people will be familiar with, although those are left to right scrolling instead of up to down. But I love 1943 so much. I even have the arcade head plate here, because anyone who's watched my collection video will know I have the Outzone arcade machine. Well, I actually also have the 1943 arcade board, which I can switch out into that at any time, since they both take the same kind of board. I just don't have a separate machine for it, so unfortunately I can only have one of the games in there at a time. So sometimes I'll switch out and then put that the plate up there. Let's see, another NES game I love, DuckTales, another one made by Capcom. It's funny, because you wouldn't think that the Disney games would be overly exciting, but just about all of the Disney games that Capcom had a hand in back in the NES days actually turned out to be a lot of fun, and this one definitely has a major Mega Man influence by the way that you can select whatever level you want to do in whatever order you want to do it. So I'm probably going to end up playing that one for a random game of the day very soon. Another game, we have Kirby's Adventure. Kirby games, I don't play too many of them. I've 100%ed this one, because that was a lot of fun. You have some of the secret exits or the switches that you need to press later in the game. But I've 100%ed Crystal Shards, although I haven't played too many of the other ones. I've been meaning to get around to playing more Kirby games, but just not enough time for everything, unfortunately. I have to stick to a few series that I really like and fit in other ones like Kirby whenever I get the chance. Another series, I haven't played too many of the games from Castlevania. I've played the first 4, so there's the 3 for NES, and then the 4th one for Super Nintendo, although after that I didn't stick with it too much, like the PlayStation ones, and then we all know how terrible, well it's not that bad, some people don't like it, but there's the 64 one and stuff like that, which are kind of weird. Another NES game I love, River City Ransom. It's one of the, I don't play too many beat-em-up games, but River City Ransom is a lot of fun, and it's where the awesome barf catchphrase comes from. Yeah, I love that game. Let's see, another one, Crystalis. It's definitely a lot like Zelda, but with sort of an RPG element added to it. I know a lot of people probably are saying Zelda, it is an RPG, but I mean like the whole experience and leveling up aspect of RPGs and things like that. So like enemies give you experience and you grow levels over time and get stronger. But then there's still the whole dungeon exploration and collecting items and things like that in it. So it's sort of like Zelda in that sense, but then it is a lot of fun and a massive world to explore. So the last NES game I have to show, I believe, is Zoda's Revenge. And if you look down there, you might not be able to see it. It actually has the subtitle, I don't think it showed up, Star Tropics 2. So yes, there actually was a sequel to my favorite NES game. Unfortunately, it's still a fun game compared to some of the NES games out there, but it's not as good. I mean, it's still a lot of fun, and I actually didn't find out about it until 2004, when I got my first computer and got the internet for the first time. So that's 2004, that's actually 10 years after it came out, because for the longest time I thought that Star Tropics was the only game in the series. So I was ecstatic to find out about this, although unfortunately it wasn't really the game that I had been looking forward to after all those years, because, well, it still has a lot of the first game's elements and stuff to it. It adds some new things, and the story's definitely not as strong, and overall, it's fun, but definitely not as fun as the first one in my eyes. And then one more thing I had to show, Famicom game, Atlantis no Nazo. It's a really strange Famicom game, really difficult, too, to get through in one playing, even though it gives you 7 lives when you first start. But, yeah, very interesting game, and it's funny to note how big the Famicom game boxes are compared to the NES game boxes, so that's kind of funny to note there. Okay, wow, 11 minutes just on NES games, so let's see, I don't want this video to take all night. So let's see, what are we going to show next? What are these? Alright, so I think we're going to move on to Super Nintendo now, and the first thing I'm going to show is probably my favorite Super Nintendo game, Super Mario World, whether it's for the Super Nintendo, whether it's the European version, whether it's the Japanese version, or whether it's the Korean version, I love Super Mario World. This is probably one of my favorite Mario games in the whole world. And out of the first 4 Mario games, as you can see, in Japan, Super Mario World was actually called, I'm moving it the wrong way, Super Mario Brothers 4. That's a 4 right there. It's probably not showing up too well. But out of the first 4 Mario games, Super Mario World is by far my favorite for so many reasons. It's just an incredible game. I love the map system. I love the items. The cape is awesome. Yoshi's fun to use. It's very long, and it is just overall a great game. But Super Mario Brothers 3 is like so close behind. It is an awesome game as well. Alright. Yeah, but 4 different versions of Super Mario World. That is how much I love it. Especially the Korean version is pretty weird too. I mean, you turn it on the back and Korean there. The Super Comboy version. I believe the Super Nintendo was called the Super Comboy in Korea. And then, of course, you can also find Super Mario World on your Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World Kart, which is pretty hard to find, actually. Let's see. So, yeah, other Super Nintendo games. We've got a don't drop it. Super Mario All-Stars. Very fun. Of course, it's just a compilation of 4 other Mario games, but Lost Levels makes it so worth it, because that is an incredible game. Just like I showed you before, Lost Levels, only released in Japan, which was actually a Super Mario Brothers 2 in Japan. So, that was the first time we ever got to play it. It was also on Super Mario Deluxe for the Game Boy Color tacked on. It wasn't as good though, some of the physics weren't carried over and stuff like that. Another awesome Super Nintendo game, Yoshi's Island, Super Mario World 2, actually. Very fun game. Yeah, it's awesome. So many items to collect. I love collecting items in my video games. It's very long. Again, awesome level design. Just so many fun things about that. And then Yoshi's Story for N64 was kind of like a sequel to it, but it was a downgrade more than anything. Yoshi's Island is awesome. So the next thing we got here, the Donkey Kong Country series for the Super Nintendo. It is one of my favorite series of all time. The first 3 Donkey Kong Country games, Returns is good too, but we'll get to that later when we're talking about Wii games, but especially the first 3, and especially 3 and 2, I like a bit more than the first one. And then 2 is my favorite of them all, but they are just so much fun to play. The level design, the way the game mechanics work, the hidden items to find, the bonus games, just everything about the music too. I love video game music is a big part of the video games I play. I mean, sometimes good music can turn around an absolutely terrible game for me, because I love video game music. And just, yeah, sometimes, like, it definitely makes the experience that much better when a game has good music. And then one more thing, actually no, we're almost done the Super Nintendo, but right here, of course, the Mega Man X games for Super Nintendo. Very good games. I don't know which one's my favorite between 1 and 2. 1 and 2 are very good. 3 is probably the rarest of the Super Nintendo Mega Man X games, although it's probably my least favorite of them all. I mean, just the level design, the music, I don't know, just didn't like it as much. But 1 and 2, I'm always debating which one I like more. So, of course, I already talked about my Metroid. Super Metroid is a very awesome game. Got everything in that, and that's not knock anything over on this table I have set up here. And one more Super Nintendo game, really obscure one that no one's probably played. Pocky and Rocky. I mean, it sounds like a kid's game just from it, and if you looked at the front, it looks kind of weird, but it's actually a very fun game. It's a pretty difficult game, too. It's not very long, but it's sort of like an arcade shooter, like one of the type where you actually get to walk around and shoot in all 8 directions. And the music in it's incredible. Just an overall very fun game. Alright, so that's it for Super Nintendo. So before I continue on with Nintendo, I think we'll quickly move over to some Sega stuff.